Hello, I'm Gemma Starr, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection to Katajuda. Katajuda is our beautiful sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine site. What I'm here to do is to give a platform to our men so they can share their journey into the heart with other men and, of course, with us women. Walking right there beside them, they can share their experiences, their wisdom, their knowledge, their insights, their tools, their practices, what helped them on their journey, and that they can now share with us. Today's guest is a man named Reknow, and he has a great Telegram channel called Healing is a Feeling. And I've invited Reknow onto the show. He does lots of Q&A chats with Justin Carpenter, and he is so knowledgeable in so many areas, especially around food, health, fasting, and all through his own experience and embodiment. So my greatest pleasure to welcome Reknow onto Heart Warriors. Enjoy. Hello, Reknow. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hello, Gemma. Thanks for having me. It's a very nice morning here in Germany. Yes. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. So I'm really excited to hear about you. So you're in Germany and you're an Aussie, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up in. I've only been here the last 5 years. With my wife is German, and so we have 3 kids. And yeah, I've lived in Germany the last 5 years. Had to learn German, and been quite the experience.
Oh, amazing. And, I know bits and pieces of your journey through your sharing on your Telegram channel, but I'm really excited to find out so much more today. Let's start off with getting to know a bit about the man you are today. How would you describe yourself?
Well, thanks for the question. And yeah, I think I try not to fit into any boxes whatsoever. I've really been very fortunate in my life to have not had the perfect, you know, starting point, and so I've been really lucky to really forge my own path in my life. And yeah, I guess I just describe myself as a father, as a loving being, trying to find the truth in this world, and bring back some compassion, bring back this right brain sort of way of living for all of us. And it started with being unhealthy and not knowing why, and not being able to um, to get good answers about it, and also seeing through a lot of the I guess deception in our culture and in our world. So yeah, I guess I'm just trying to be a free thinker, trying to represent ideas that are not represented, balancing equations. And I'm the kind of person that's trying to be a little bit brave with coming out and espousing ideas that ideas that love us back. Love ideas that love us back. It's very easy to love chocolate or love confectionery. That's an easy one. But let's find a way to just raise our understanding of these little traps in life, and to just have the conversation. I very much see myself as a facilitator, as a instigator of conversation, because I really believe in that power of a group. That kind of like the 12 Angry Men, style or an Arthur round table. I really believe in a circle of people with all the time in the world that value that that anything that someone says is the most important thing in the world, that they're there to witness that for each other. So that kind of compassion that we would have for each other. So yeah, I would describe myself as simply really being present as much as I can to push those things forward. There's nothing more important in the world to me than pushing those ideas forward and not just staying still, you know, instigating.
Beautiful. And you do that and and add your beautiful presence so powerfully in your group. So you're really, embodying that. So thank you so much for that, because I know, just me personally, by listening to you, I feel that presence. I feel your genuine wanting to help people through your own experience and your own wisdom. So let's get into that and get as much of that out as we can today on the show. Reknow, let's start in your childhood. What was your most challenging experience that you had to overcome?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's yeah, my father died when I was a baby, and it was kind of like a Disney movie, where the main character's parent dies very early. But I was too young to remember it. So it wasn't exactly, this is not a traumatic story for me. This is more, I was growing up around traumatized people from that, because I had no awareness. You can't be traumatized by something you don't know what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was a really interesting experience to understand trauma, to understand really that powerful love. My two older sisters and my mother were were incredible, feminine, loving, compassionate beings. I almost had three moms. I like to say, because they were much older, my older sisters, and just yeah, I just was very almost coveted in this space, So yeah, so I guess the most difficult experiences were just seeing other boys or other people with their dads was probably, if I'm really honest, I'm trying to be as honest as possible with this sort of thing, and as vulnerable as possible. We can't expect vulnerability and honesty from other people if we're not willing to give it ourselves, and so yeah, I think that was probably yeah.
How did you cope with seeing your sisters and your mother in this state of, of grief and trauma? How does a little boy cope with that?
Well, in a lot of ways, it was very good for me to connect with my heart, that's why I bring it up so quickly, because yeah, grief is a part of the heart chakra. Grief is the negative, it's the opposite, other side of the coin. We have joy and grief, and so you look at our world now. There's so much there that hasn't been grieved over, that we're sort of pushing away, and we can only go further in our collective ascension when we collectively grieve over something like this. So for me, it was becoming very comfortable with grief, and so very often in my life, when I'm surrounded by people who want to talk about difficult topics, it's very easy for me to listen, and to empathize and to hold space for them, and to do my best to remove distractions so that they feel they're safe and can continue. I really, as soon as I hear someone needs to talk about something, my wife gets kind of pissed off at me. It's like, come on, someone needed to talk. I needed to listen, So yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a really precious skill to have, because so many people, until we consciously learn to listen, like I am doing by doing these shows, it's so many people's natural instinct to talk, fill in the spaces, or already have what we want to say before actually allowing the other person to finish. So you having that skill at such a young age, that must have made you, I imagine, stand out in some way as being quite mature for your age.
Um, yeah, I think so. I think I struggled a lot in the teenage years. You know, the high school and all this sort of stuff. It was too much, too fast, too much pressure. It felt like I was in this whole right brain, left brain thing. I think I was. It was too much facts, figures, and logic. I was not willing to go there. I shut it out in a lot of ways. And yeah, I felt like I was like a lot of people. I felt that high school experience with all the hormones and all of the the things that we see, it wasn't positive for me, and but luckily I had a really important redemption for that when my first job was to look after teenagers in that space. So the first 3 years I was doing outdoor education, which is because I loved going out into the outdoors as a like doing a school camp as a participant. And so then my first job was doing that. First sort of 3, 4, 5 years of my professional life was being a facilitator of high adventure kind of like group dynamics and sort of self realization experiences for teenagers. Typically they climb a ladder, they'd get on a platform, and they'd say a goal, something that they want to achieve in their life, and then they would jump off, or they'd feel the fear, and then they'd imagine that fear as a color, and then they'd imagine themselves breathing that out. So it was kind of bringing them into the moment, and also purposefully instigating a kind of trauma or a kind of in a controlled environment, and then the support of the group gives them that encouragement, motivation, and celebration ultimately. Or also some people would stand there for hours totally in fear, and then it was a real group challenge to somehow find a positive resolution for that person, and to celebrate the attempt, so that's really, so in a way my first job kind of got me to grow up and to see myself as that we really need these experiences. We need groups, we need nature, we need all the ingredients there for a human being to truly sort of feel alive and to thrive in the spontaneity of every moment, with deep breaths. So
I'm really interested now that you brought up the subject of fear, because that's relevant to everyone to some extent. What tips or tools have you got, or insight into the experience of fear to get men through whatever they're going through?
Well, fear often has a reason and a purpose, and I think it's really important to go back in time and for what, because often we bring in past parameters or things that we're worried about into the current moment, and so it's the typical kind of like trauma complex kind of thing. And so I would just suggest to them, what about all the joy that you've had in your past? Can we bring that into the present moment? Why are we creating this firestorm of just the negative side? What happened to your ability to literally decide how you want to feel right here, right now? And I often do eye gazing with people, especially with other men, and I tell them that, well, let's do an exercise. Let's pretend that we're the biggest enemies we've ever been. Like we're gonna it's like a fight to the death kind of thing. And then halfway through, I'll ring a bell or something after 5 or 10 minutes, whenever, and then we'll flip it over to we're best buddies. We're on each other's team, because especially between brothers, there's this kind of like a really high level of trust that goes through, like almost like an initiation period of getting to know each other. So, and then what I learned from that is that what it sort of hopefully shows people is that through the eye gazing or through that connecting moment, we can decide how we want to feel, and just purely through intention and and breath and being present. And so I think it takes a little bit of front loading before someone would be in a scenario. So there's a lot of just empowering someone to take back how they want to feel about things. That not to be some kind of a floating being that just is constantly being told how to feel. So yeah, I mean, fear. I get scared all the time about maybe, I had a bad dream the other night that something happened to, or my kids, or I lost my wallet or something, like just little things. But it's fear is really, it's a really good motivator as well to do well in your life. We can have a healthy relationship with fear if it, all emotions exist for a reason in that way, and it's because we're not in alignment with who we really want to be. Same with jealousy. We see someone who's doing something that we wish we could do, then we need to, do the work, I guess. Which we have a funny relationship with that phrase between Justin and I, where Justin keeps saying, got to do the work, and I'm like, I'm not sure if doing the work is the best phrase, because it shouldn't feel like work. If we're just aligning with ourselves, it should be doing the highest purpose, or doing the stuff that we're really in alignment to be doing, resonating with. So yeah, it's just a funny phrase.
I like to say coming into alignment with love.
There you go. I knew you would have a perfect thing. Yeah.
Anything that causes us pain emotionally, mentally, or ultimately physically is something that's not in alignment with love. So
yeah,
back on the path, come back to love.
Like sin in Latin is without. That's what it means. Like in Spanish, Italian, sin is without. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. And you've named your episode Healing is a Feeling. So while we're on the subject of feeling, what is it about that title? And it's also the name of your wonderful Telegram group. What is it about that phrase that does it for you?
It's just something that came up during fasting, and I often, when I chase experiences, there's a certain feeling that I'm like a feeling I've never felt before, or something. Often it's feelings we've had as a kid that we've sort of forgotten, and so healing with a feeling just means going within. It means having any kind of experience that you wish you could have. You can have it completely. That our minds and our brains and our souls can literally gift us those feelings of self-love or self-realization. And I think it was, I did a long fast of about 20 days, and that was the gift that I got from it in the end. The download, because I felt all of those feelings. And so this is why I wanted to start the channel. This is what the channel is sort of cornerstoned around, because no one else was doing it, of course. So I wanted to create a forum for people to come on who are self-experimenting with fasting, who are not going to just get, a guide or someone to do it, that we will be the guide together. And because when I was doing it, that's what I was guided to share, that I wanted to be around people who were doing this, because it just was so life-changing, so radically out there. Anyone who would attempt that, I wanted to know that person. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's just some little social filters like that sometimes that just, because we're really, I think we're in a time now where we really have to find our people, and they're out there, they really are. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fascinated. I mean, I'd like to get more into fasting and the details of you know, what you got out of your health journey later on. But can we start at the beginning of your health journey? What was the catalyst that, you know, you mentioned that, you know, was maybe one of your deepest, darkest moments health-wise that catapulted you on this journey of exploration and understanding?
Yeah. Um, well, I had eaten. Well, first of all, it always starts with the front loading. The So I listened to this amazing podcast called Where Health Lies, um, and it talked about fasting. So I found myself having salmonella poisoning, um, which, for those of you who don't know, is from eating raw meat, particularly poultry. So this was about 6 or 7 years ago, and well, it's a kind of very punishing experience where everything you eat um, gives you massive stomach cramps, and you can either go to the doctor and get antibiotics for it, um, or you can do a fast, you know. And so basically, I up until that moment, I've been an athlete, I've been a football player, and I could feel that I was getting massive inflammation all over my body, kind of like a bathtub filling up with water, but not, not enough water coming out in terms of waste products inside of me. My whole back and spine, especially my lower back, I had a slipped disc from carrying a canoe. I did a Canadian canoe trip where you carry canoes across a few kilometers between lakes and stuff, and I slipped my disc, and so that had been 5 years of having, quite a lot of pain in my spine that I thought would never heal. So I had a lot of regret around those, just in my heart about not looking after myself enough. Um, and I had young children at the time, like babies, and it was very stressful because you're struggling with sleeping, and I was in a new country. I just arrived in Germany. I didn't speak the language. I wasn't sure if it was for me, if I'm really honest with myself at the time. It was very difficult. It was the middle of winter. It was minus degrees outside, snow, which was all very different for a kid from, Lismore in northern New South Wales. Uh, and then, yeah, there was all of that, and then I couldn't, then I was really struggling to eat anything, and it went on for a few weeks, and eventually I just put two and two together, that I needed to fast, that because and so just first time I'd ever done it, I just did 5 days. And it wasn't that difficult. Wasn't it? Looking back, because I'd always been obsessed with health and physical performance and food, trying to get and just like being the best that I could be physically in that way. So anyway, I got to the end of 5 days. It wasn't as difficult as I thought. And when I started to, so I felt very light. I felt like I remember running up the stairs and springing like I was a spring chicken, having more energy than I could ever have imagined. And it just blew me away that you could eat less and have more energy and feel better. Because everything I'd ever learned up until that point was that, oh, you need this special thing, herb or pill or supplement or all this crap, and it was a watershed moment where I just realized, oh my goodness, it's just gluttony. We're just gluttons. Everyone's a glutton. and God never left us with this horrible mind trap, that so I was raised a Christian with my mum was very Christian, but I'd sort of put it to one side in my life, and fasting kind of brought it back, as a sort of something that I wanted to know more about, wanted to know more about it, how it was relevant for me. So yeah, then then I had cooked eggs as my first meal after 5 days, which I don't recommend at all. It was terrible. All the inflammation came straight away back. It was like a light turning on. It was like all of my back, all of my legs, and I don't know. It was a bad choice. It's funny that a vegetable police made the same mistake after, but he did a 20-day fast, and he ended up in hospital. So, so I was glad I made that mistake after only 5 days, because I think 5 days you can kind of make any mistake at the end of it, and you're probably going to be okay. But and you actually asked me what you were at about 4 or 5 days, and you asked me what should I do, and you were thinking something cooked foodie, and I was like, oh no, go with fruit.
Well, I did. It was so funny. I actually did 4.5 days because long story, but I had to go to work and everything. So, and I thought, oh, what shall I have? And I just got a piece of mandarin, and normally, you just chomp on a mandarin, but I put it in my mouth, and I was just like, I just got warmth through my whole body. I hadn't even chewed on it, just put it in my mouth, like this beautiful warmth through my body. And then I just started having a bit dizzy in this psychedelic experience. And I went and lay down, and I was just like enjoying this experience. And then I got up, and then I had a couple more pieces and slowly ate some more fruit. But it was crazy. Yeah.
That's how I say it. I think we get high off the food all of a sudden because we're such in a sensitive state. Even herbs or all the fruits you get, it's almost like a drug or getting high off it, or you feel the connection and the story in the in the energy of the food. Yeah,
It was amazing, like, divine. It was just one little piece of mandarin, crazy. But Reno, let's get into some more aspects of your life. What would you say was your deepest, darkest moment as an adult?
well, I think definitely the last 2 years. You know, going through a kind of research, journey, looking for answers in the world, being in conflict a lot with my wife, and wanting to know the truth about what's gone on, and feeling like no one was listening. Feeling like there was, for the first time in my life, no one in my circle who I could reach out to that would understand how I felt, or at all. So not only was I living in Germany, away from my culture, my language, food, all that, my family, and all my friends that I grew up with, I was in another place that I developed a life here, but it was not happening in terms of like-minded people at all around me, and because of such a divisive, coronavirus, well, it was all part of, obviously we know now, and it was a good lesson because I had to not be so pushy maybe with some of my beliefs, or play the game a bit more of just, to be honest, I had to really suppress a lot of who I am or what I was, and just be the observer and just be the listener for a little while, and allow people to carry on in this kind of pantomime around me, and just not intervene with it, and just sort of observe it, which I was, as I say, I've been prepared for a long time, and it was kind of, once I figured that out, that hey, your role here is not to be the intervener, it's just to provide a kind of karmic signpost along the way, just a very little thing, but no more, and then that's it. And it was interesting because just people out in the world that I would meet were it was more interesting to talk to them than it was anyone I already knew from that point, because I already knew where they stood. I was like, all right. I would walk into a room and I'd be like, normally I'd be like, oh, is anyone gonna like me before? And then from then on, I was walking to the room is like, am I gonna like anyone here? And yeah, so it was a really difficult time. It really put me at odds with a lot of the people around me that I loved. And thank God I had the kids. I got 3 beautiful young kids to spend a lot of time with. And I mean, if we're made in the image of God, they are the most unfiltered version of that. And so I always had enough love. I was never too far gone. But then obviously kids can be annoying sometimes and and crazy. And so yeah, I maybe wasn't the best parent I ever wish I could have been sometimes, for sure. So, but we're definitely through all of that nowadays. The family and I are very united. Yeah, but it was a hard couple of years.
Yeah.
By.
Well, I mean, with parenting, we do the best we can on any given day. There's so many variables. At the end of the day, we're just all doing the best we can. But, Rena, I'd love to bring it back to the conversation of the last 3 years and those of us that, sort of had a different understanding of what was going on to the mainstream narrative. And I have heard you mention this quite a bit in your talks when people have asked you questions about how to deal with a partner, a spouse who is not on the same page as us. So, would you like to talk to someone who is having that issue and just guide them through what you think from your experience you'd like to share?
Absolutely, yeah. This is one of the most important topics, actually, that not many people are talking about, and it really needs to get out there. That doesn't mean you have to break up with your partner or find another life. That is, it's something that the whole of society is going through, and yeah, we get this discussion ongoing on the channel all the time, and because it is such a unexplored area of discussion. So I think it's like anything. It's a challenge of love. Our children are going to do things we don't like. Our partners are going to do things we don't like. We love them enough to have children with them in the first place, and there's not that I still love her, even though and I understand exactly where she's coming from, and I understand. To me, there's always to the mind level of what's going on, the heart level of what's going on, and then there's the bravery part. And so if I'm critical of my wife, I'm critical of her in a bravery sense, and maybe on a mind sense, but definitely not of a heart sense. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. I know that she doesn't get what's going on. She's like, why does that matter? The whole world, like she doesn't connect things, and she's not brave. She's not the kind of person that, unless she's, maybe really in the fire of something. But what was really the really big moment for me was watching the fourth Matrix movie. And so just spoiler alert, the Trinity, which is a representative of the feminine energy, she was completely blue pilled, and there was Neo watching her go about her life in this kind of pantomime, and he had to wait, and he had to witness it, and then when she did figure it out, she was the storm that came through and won the battle, won the day, and resolved everything. So I think it's, rather than running away from the greatest story that's never been told, I think we need to be present, we need to be strong, and bear witness to them realizing all of this stuff. Because if we're sure and have faith within ourselves, then it's only a matter of time. And don't we want to be there for that? Isn't that why we came here? you know.
But what
So
do you?
I'm,
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Go,
go on.
please go on. I think. What do
Rather
you
than being,
think?
go ahead. Yeah.
Like, I even know when I'm talking to someone and a topic comes up and you're like, oh, if I said what I really wanted to say, it's just going to cause an argument or a disagreement. Like, how do you deal with when something comes up, and you know that you've got a difference of opinion? Do you go there or do you just say, hey, let's not talk about that?
Well, it's funny. I was filling up water bottles. So in Germany, the filling up of the spring with big water bottles is something that is not that common anymore, but it used to be. Every town is called spring this or spring that, and they all have this infrastructure in the middle of town. So there we were with our big truck filled with all these water bottles, filling up, and we had these people coming past who were like just like noticing us and saying, "Hey, you guys, oh, you're smart. You're filling up from the fresh water rather than the tap water." All the conspiracy theorist type people coming up to us like, "Hey, buy extra food, have extra food in your cupboards, and change your money to gold and silver," and all this sort of like giving us advice of how to prepare for the winter, for the apocalypse kind of a thing. And and my wife was just like kind of because it's on many fronts. This diametrically opposed views on every front. It's financial, it's health, it's every single thing that organized society has set up is on the opposite of us taking our power back and being responsible for ourselves. So then my wife starts to look at me like, oh, they actually, there's other people out there saying the same things as you, because it doesn't happen very often that she sees that. In fact, it never happens. She's never
Yeah,
seen that. But to
yeah.
have like 3 or 4 people come consistently and say the same thing to us, and she's not dumb. She's sort of looking around at the news and going, this doesn't make sense either. And so, yeah, it's just drip by drip, just trust in the process, and kind of have your little wry smile as you go, and always shift the tension into comedy as much as you can.
Hmm.
You say, well, maybe I'm not such a crazy person after all, sweetheart.
I love that. And while we're on the subject, because, I just love your devotion and dedication to making your marriage work despite you've got your culture issues there, you've moved away from home and you're on different sides of the fence as regards to understanding what's going on in the world. What other tips apart from love, which I know is the be all and end all, but can we break that down into any other practical strategies that you use to you know make your marriage work?
Yeah. I think it really comes down to front loading ideas, when there's a state of calm, you know. So I know financially we had a lot of disagreements to start with, and there was it was really difficult because any movement I wanted to make financially would cause a huge fight, um, and so it was very dysfunctional. And so I kind of she wanted to read a book about different financial stuff. So I recommended the Robert Kiyosaki book. Do you know the one? No, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rich Dad.
Oh yeah.
Which
Yeah.
which is famous. This is like Trump and Kiyosaki are like best friends. It's really obvious.
Oh,
And so he recommends everything opposite to the modern financial advice, basically. And so she read that book, and then she's like, "But this is in conflict. But it makes a lot of sense. But it's in conflict with everything else I know." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's the drama, isn't it? Of having to figure this out for ourselves. That's what I've been trying to deal with this whole time." And so, yeah, I think invest in the same way that we invest in our own knowledge and our own journey of self care, self education, self governance. We have to drip by drip help them. And it's only been the last year or so where my wife will start to listen to podcasts or read books on certain things. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just not information is key, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We live in information. We live in an information psycho-spiritual war era. So how we learn, sorry, how we learn is everything. And as soon as we get out of those filters, that like the news is a filter, it's controlled. What's said can only be said if it fits in with with the whole
Yeah.
globalist control system. So as soon as we get out of that and start listening to each other, like if
Mm.
God was such a genius as we all say he is, wouldn't he have put little bits of the truth all across the world in all different religions and cultures that would force us to talk to each other, without prejudices? If we were really searching for a unified world, which is what everyone's so afraid of, the New World Order, wouldn't that also tell us that's what we actually need? We all need each other to be whole. And so it's often what we're afraid of is that what we actually really want and need.
Yeah. What's your understanding of masculinity and how healthy masculinity has been maybe attacked or purposely weakened? Do you see an agenda behind the suppression of masculinity?
Yeah, I see certain. Just to start with, I see feminine and masculine frequencies, and when I say frequencies, they're kind of like ways of operating, and it's really important to see something as like the military is more of a masculine,
Yes.
uh, dominant environment. Just to be crystal clear on what each one is, and so sort of every idea can kind of sort of be put on the spectrum between how feminine and how masculine they are. A classroom is actually a very masculine, energetic space. The teacher tells everyone what is right and wrong, and that's how it goes. She's the boss or he's the boss,
Yeah.
and everyone else is a participant. So yeah, and then just to juxtapose that, the feminine is everyone sitting in a circle and maybe passing around a talking stick, and you get either you have no time limit or a few minutes or whatever it is. It's all the same for everyone, and everyone can talk and feel safe and say what they need to say. And at the end, it's a majority, not a majority wins. It's the highest majority, like almost consensus. You can't have anyone there that is upset with what's being proposed. So obviously there's been more suppression of the feminine than the masculine, but the masculine has been perverted in a way where it's been used to railroad the feminine, and
Yes.
and so that anytime you get a perpetrator is also a victim in a kind of way, that they're not the same way that a victim is, obviously, but for whatever false belief that they've had, for whatever you know energetic or sort of self-importance that they've been allowed to feel, has allowed for that huge misunderstanding and then perpetration of some kind of well, literally is the Cainate Abel. It's the left and right side of the brain as well. And so anytime we shut off to I'm more important than someone else, or I'm going to make this decision over the top of someone else, without like going through a kind of process of free choice. And yeah, so I think this is like with everything. Like look at the vaccine. Look, it's all about setting up an unmanipulated free choice. That's all we really want. And we want a world that is actually finally fair on all of these things. So yeah, the masculine, it also gets unfortunately tainted with men. Where we see masculinity as only, masculine and feminine are within all of us, within all of life. And so, as a more feminine dominant man, even though I am a man, but I identify more with the feminine frequency of things because, I see that's more important in our world today. And it's just in my nature as well. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's meant to be that way. We're meant to be here to correct. Whether in our bloodline or whatever, however this is supposed to work, we're here to stop the tit for tat on the masculine level. And be the one to lay that sword down, lay that power of the masculine down, and say, let's be feminine dominant in the things that are important, in our politics, in our money. Look at finance. It's going to be decentralized finance. Whether it's the Flare network or whatever it's going to be. Rather than banks being in control, it's going to be a decentralized, frictionless system where we can loan money off other people, and that's it. There is no centralized authority giving out, money from nowhere.
Yeah.
So obviously we have the Osiris monument and the ties. It's the same thing. The tie is the Osiris monument, and it's so it's pretty full on what we've been through as a race and as a culture. And again, we're going to feel a lot of grief on the masculine side as we learn more and more and more going forward. So yeah, I feel a lot of said it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Now you've got such a wide range of knowledge. Where would you like to direct this conversation? Where did we need to go?
Well, fasting. I think I want I'd love people to join the channel, to join the conversation, to experiment with fasting, as well as in their general truth journey. A lot of people go down the truth road and they get very sucked into a lot of the darkness, a lot of maybe the David Icke, the reptilian thing. And they start to ignore, obviously they see that the devil exists. They see that, this whole manipulation that we're in, this upside down world that we're in. The education destroys learning, politics destroys good discussion, money destroys wealth, the kind of that kind of thing. But then they don't take that turn towards the philosophical discussion or maybe the spiritual religious discussion. And it's so we know that religions have been misinterpreted, and so I think it should be the highest priority for everyone. I think to like what Charlie Freak and Justin say. You did a beautiful interview with Charlie Freak a few weeks ago, the Manspeak one, and everything he said, it blew my mind. It just like that man. I want to just learning is repetition, and I want to just keep listening and absorbing that, because the way it's not just knowing it, it's being able to deliver it. And so say there's a protest on or something, be able to get up there and speak for an hour and just bang it out, one after another, all of the truths. We all should be seeking that level of clarity about how to unlock religions, and this is how we kill the zombie lies, the lies that never die. That we're worthless sinners, and this is the only life that we have, and all this sort of stuff. We need to, So, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask you how often you fast now. How have you incorporated fasting into your regular, everyday, every month, every year life?
I don't have breakfast. I drink as much water as I can in the mornings. Then I'll have fruit, maybe around 1 o'clock. I always have the best possible tasting fruit I can find, whatever is resonating with me. So at the moment I've got grapes, because we're at the end of the summer here, and beautiful apples. Some of the apples at the moment are so incredible. And then I'll wait till then. So I'll just have like maybe as much until I'm full, and then I'll wait till dinner time and I'll have dinner with the family. So like last night we had cooked sweet potatoes with some chestnuts, but I have a salad beforehand. I ate a piece of fennel beforehand. I love fennel is one of my favorite vegetables. It's very, very, the fiber and the juices and that kind of aniseedy feeling is very calming for the stomach. So yeah, that's typical sort of thing. But whenever I'm sick, I fast. That's one thing I do with the children. they're very good at that. Like my mum visited us, and she couldn't believe it that the kids both had the flu and spent 2 days just barely eating at all, just drinking water, and kind of like an animal that's injured, sort of a thing. And this is just the basic idea that we can heal ourselves, is as a primary, body heals itself. We get in the way by adding things to it. But yeah, my aim is to one day do a 40-day fast. You know, I still hold that in the highest esteem. You know, the 3 times 13, so 13, 13, 13, the 39, which is the 39 ways that the body heals itself. And then the 1 extra day for the download, you know, the gift.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I also would like to try doing 4 10-day fasts on every equinox and solstice in 1 year, because that would also be equivalent to 40 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Reknow, Reknow, was that your birth name, or did you change it? Have you got a story around that you'd like to share?
Well, yeah, that's so I as I said, I worked with children doing the school camps, and so I learned that you could kind of make up a kind of alias name for a week with the kids, and I learned how powerful it was to have a different like a different name, a different mantra for who you were. And so 1 week I was called Splinter, then I was called Rochi, or then I was called well, I was actually working with a guy called Chicken all the time as well. So yeah, there was a lot of funny experiences there, and I think I just realized how sort of generic our names are sometimes, and how much energy is already stored in those names, whatever it is. And my name before was David, and I felt it was just a bit too you know, overused in a way. I wanted something a bit less common, and so Reknow was what I called my car at first, and then I had a beautiful elder in the outdoor education industry who we were talking about this together, and he just stood up one night and said, "Everyone, listen, we've got a young man here, David. He's only 18 or 19. He's been here for a year now, been through all these experiences. From now on, he's going to be called Reknow, you know." And so he kind of did it to me, where he sort of pushed me to do it, and he said to do a little dance. Everyone called me Reknow, which I didn't really do, but I had a funny little story that's was kind of ridiculous every time, and I just sort of I wasn't attached to people calling me, you know, I didn't make anyone call me that. I just sort of introduced myself as that, and pretty soon everyone was using it. And you know, it's a very Australian thing to have a nickname, but I do think it is a powerful moment where I switched from being a boy to a man, and it's a symbol of that for me, you know? So and then over time I realized, oh, it literally means re-know, as in to re-know something, that we like on a soul level we know everything, you know, everyone knows everything. You know, when you talk to people sometimes, you say something, "Hey, do you know this?" They're like, "Yeah, I know that," you know. Or we learn how to drive, or we learn how to do something, and we're like, "Man, I feel like I've always been able to do this."
Yeah. And when we're learning, you know, truth of stuff, it's more sort of spiritual awareness, conscious stuff. It's more like remembering than, you know, actually learning. It's like, oh, remove that filter and actually, you know, reconnect with the ancient and divine knowing. But it is fascinating, this topic around names, because I mean, I've changed my name, well, twice, because when I got divorced from my ex-husband, which was, you know, nearly 20 years ago, I didn't want to keep my married name, but I also didn't want to go back to my maiden name, because that was connected to my dad, and my married name was connected to my ex-husband. I wanted to be me. And so I sat with it for a year. What will I do? And I chose Star because I wanted something connected to nature. I wasn't even sort of spiritual or anything at the time. I just wanted something light and connected to nature. I'd never heard of star beings. I didn't even know if I think I was still totally on planet Earth at that point. But anyway, and then Gemma, I changed last year in September. I was Karen. I don't know if you know. I think I told you anyway. And of course, all the hoo-ha around Karen, that just didn't feel right for me. And I sat with it for a couple of years to make sure it wasn't too much of a trigger. But one day I just woke up. I was like, oh no, Karen's gone. I'm going to change to Gemma, which is what I would have called my youngest son had he been a girl. So instead of having to think about 1,000 names, I was like, that's it, did it the next day. But a lot of people are like, oh, you can change your name, there, but doesn't it make a difference to change your name and have that power, and just to not be in the identity that someone else has given you? Honestly, it is such a powerful experience, and not many people do it. Have you got anything else to share around this?
Well, I've been an advocate of it ever since, because it's always been a thing, right?
Yeah.
Always been, well, how'd you get the name Reno? And after my silly story and everything, I always say what you just said there, and so I have a bit of a trail of encouraging people behind me. Like there's one brother I met at a rainbow gathering, who we were sitting together in one night, and we were sort of like spitballing, what about this, or what about, his name was Nicholas, and he was like, I don't like the name, it sounds like I'm stealing something all the time, and I'm nicking things, or and he always hated his name, because for me, when someone said to me like, what is your favorite name, I would always say Reno. And so I wanted that for him. I was like trying to encourage him, and so we had this ridiculous night, sort of trying to think of names, and I was coming out with Spanish words all the time, like what about suerte, like, which means like, and then I said, what about fuerte, which means strong, and he goes, oh, that sounds good, and so he sort of augmented it a bit and changed it to forte, which is like, what is your forte? And so he'd be a great brother to have on your show, because he's an incredible musician, and he writes a lot of songs to do with the rainbow, coming into the heart, mantras, about community and this kind of thing. He's done a whole album of music to spread that message. So he did that in 2012, when it was kind of coming into the end of the world type of a thing. And and so yeah, it's nice to look back on, and so together we sort of we got we went to the river, we made a little special presentation, and we floated it down the river, and we had a moment where we said, I used to be called Nicholas, and now I'm going to be called Forte. And there was like 4 or 5 other people that did it with us. And so at a rainbow gathering, it's sort of a very transient, nomadic meeting, like a corroboree. It's kind of like a modern, people from all over the world, all colors of the rainbow come together in one place, in one space, in nature, and spend a whole month together, by a fire, camping. No technology is allowed. It's kind of like going to the sauna. You can be naked if you want to, or not. There's only 100 people or so that go. It's all based around singing. We sort of sing the whole day long, very repetitive songs about uplifting, empowering, uniting the world, about compassion and love for each other. We treat everyone like brothers and sisters. And it's kind of the next level to school camp, it's where you graduate to, or if you're kind of wandering the planet and you find these kind of things. So yeah, and we have workshops, and people can share, teach, learn, and that kind of thing. So yeah, and it's very circle based talking.
Yeah. Do you think it's important, like, did you take the step of changing it legally? Because like, unless you change it legally, you're still on the documents, you still got your old name, you've still got to give your old name when you're talking to officials. Is it important to take that step to actually change it legally?
Not for me. I mean, when you understand the whole legal system and how kind of perverted it is in terms of the capitalization of us on these birth certificates, and the whole like docking. You were born from the birth canal, and the dock door is there, and it's all official. You can't land on the Mother Earth. You have to be caught. And we're sort of dead on arrival as corporations, dead entities. I'm sure you've had many people speak about all this. People do their own research; they can figure it out. Um, so yeah, in practicality, I think what's much more important is what people know us as colloquially, and our kind of story that we're spreading. We're all superheroes in our own movie. We're all rock stars, and we have a theme tune. And that is our name, or our message, or our song.
Nice.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
what's important.
yeah. What would you say is your highest value, Reknow, as a man?
Ooh. I think just authenticity.
Mm.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, men, especially older men above 50, in particular, um, really struggle with you know walling things off, or it's kind of like a can of worms. That's the stereotype that we're coming from, as a planet. Uh, but also, there's a lot of strength as well from men of the past who have done a lot to to we owe a lot to that history. We need to honor that history of what has come. And yeah, so for me, I always get tested by that, like trying to be more honest or more open. um, and you don't want to go too hard with it either. You want it to be proportional to like you don't want to be looking for things to be open and vulnerable about. You want it to be as true and as accurate. And it's like the four agreements, the impeccable with our word. It always comes to mind. Like take the time to be as descriptive as you can, and on the money. Yeah.
What have you got to say to men who are fearful to show their true selves to the world for fear of being, ridiculed or belittled or not accepted? How can they work through that? Because authenticity is massive.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what's been the big test the last couple of years. I think a lot of people who understand it from the mind level, understand it from the heart level, like they care about the world, they care about everything, and then they understand, they see the deception, they see like a doctor working in a place, and knowing how BS a lot of what they're doing is, but going along with it anyway. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's just the lesson we're up to. I
Yeah.
think that's what this whole thing was designed to do, was to highlight. And so there's no shortcutting these moments. That's gonna be the huge regret in hindsight. Yeah.
Do you think there's any correlation between learning external truth and showing internal truth?
Ooh.
Authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie Frick says that if you're left in the company of one after sharing truth, then God or Christ is closest to you in those moments. And so flipping the narrative. Um, but what was the question exactly? I'm not sure
I
what
was
I'm saying.
wondering if, as we're on our journey to exploring external truth, do you think
Mm.
there's a parallel to us becoming more authentic and showing our internal truth of who we really are?
Well, totally. That's why they put the mass deception across the whole world, is to block our internal truth. Like it's just another strategy.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how sophisticated all of this deception is. It's just beyond what we can imagine. That's how darkness always is. Just that extra level beyond what we could possibly, in our beautiful, clear, good-hearted. I believe almost everyone is good-hearted and sees themselves as a good person. And obviously, we can just be tricked into these kind of paradigms. And so that's just what has happened. Yeah.
I'm interested about your life in Germany. How do German men on the whole compare to Aussie men?
Ooh. Yeah, yeah. That is a big part of this. It's kind of like the drinking culture, or the workman attitude. Um, you know, on it's similar in a way that the kind of mainstream culture does leave men having to it does bring the worst out of us as men in a lot of ways, in terms of drinking or talking about girls, or so I played football here in Germany, and I was shocked at the kind of high school nature of the maturity here amongst the men. It was really bad. Like, it was like a bunch of hyenas, trying to laugh at each other over the silliest things. It was really perverted in a lot of ways. And this is a small town that I live in, and so it has a very dark cathedral in the middle of it. So it has a pretty hectic energy, this town. But it has very sweet-hearted people in it as well. So yeah, the masculine energy is, it's a very masculine cathedral too. It's just like one pointed, like it looks like a dragon's den basically. So yeah, I mean, I come from Lismore, so on the whole, once you leave high school, you sort of leave a lot of that silliness behind, and people do mature up pretty well. But I feel like it takes a bit longer here in Germany. Like, people can live in their small town and carry that on a bit more. And so there's a big divide between the Germans that go and see the world and the Germans that don't. Because a lot of Germans are very good travelers. You go. I've been in Latin America for a year, and there was Germans everywhere. They're the most traveled country. It's amazing. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it's more, the biggest divide is more between people like who buy into the mainstream narrative and people who don't, across the world. And that's what shifts things into that spiritual journey, or I don't know, kind of malaise of believing all of the just like, it's pretty hard to see men in such a state of destruction of themselves, over smoking all the time. There's a heavy amount of smoking here.
Right.
And it's not something you can confront socially either, that self-destructive attitude. Like, I work as a security guard or like a kind of like a fans liaison officer in the standing up section of the local football club. And so I get to be face to face with the ultras, of the area. And they just want to sing and support their team, but they occasionally, like just last week, there was a huge fight. And so I could see the trauma coming out in these men, of they're almost missing war in a way, or yeah, it's pretty interesting.
What would you say, talking about German men in particular, what would you say is the biggest collective wound, or in Europe, for men?
This is a really good topic. Yeah, collective wound. Now, on the surface of things, a lot of them are very polite, and when you're just getting to know them, they're really, really good-hearted. They're seemingly very good-hearted people. It's just so the collective wound, because I see Germany as this incredible place that was really up and coming in the 1920s. You see all the buildings, and it was the most ahead in a lot of ways. Which is why it was so targeted with such a darkness at the time. And I just stayed in a beautiful youth hostel here with like hundreds and hundreds of rooms all set up, which wasn't even being used at all, just by a few families with lots of kids like ours. So there's a sad history there of kind of relics of a past where there was this really enlightened culture going on. But it has been really, really, I don't want to say the F word, but really made in that direction. The Germans nowadays are very left brain. They're the most left brain culture, the most messed with in that way. And this is why so many Germans probably do travel, just to get away from it, And so that's another reason why I would say the last couple of years have been the hardest, because I couldn't find a single person in Germany that would entertain some of the conversations that I was looking to have about what was going on. Like, it was literally, they all wore the mask, they all did what they were told, no one questioned the rules. There was even the protesters protesting against the mask wearing, who were told to wear masks as a mandate, and they wouldn't question it. But one-on-one, I was like, hey, this is BS, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, but they're like, put it on. So I went to the protest and I played my music and I didn't wear a mask, and I went to jail. I went to jail for one day, or for 4 or 5 hours, for the rest of the day that night, and had to pay all this money and all this stuff, and no one supported me, and it was pretty. At one point there was like a lot of police around, and they all just watched me get arrested, for not wearing a mask at the place where you're not supposed to be wearing a mask.
How did that feel?
Well, I called out for help and there was no help. I don't know. It was hard. It was really, in a way though, I kind of had to laugh it off and shrug it off and just be like, well, this is how far we've fallen in a lot of ways, and I'm here to witness it. I didn't think all of this would happen. I pushed it to that level because I thought something would snap, but it didn't. But that doesn't mean it won't in the future, though.
Yeah.
So it felt terrible, but I can see how it's part of where we're up to, and yeah. So
yeah, that's crazy. Reknow, we've got about 15 minutes left. What else needs to be said in this conversation around either your journey around men or masculinity?
Well, maybe the biggest thing for me has been music. And so on my channel, I share a lot of my music, these are mantras and chants that are part of, sometimes it takes time to really soak in the message of whatever we're trying to share. And I found doing everything in song has been the most healing, the most connecting to heart, and so at these events that I talk about, we're cooking as we're singing, or we're literally doing everything as a song, like a universe, like a one song.
Yes.
And so this whole reality is created for human exploration and freedom and self-discovery. Hopefully in the future we can find songs that we can all sing together with wholeheartedness and agreement of what we're singing about, separate from religions, or and unlock the throat chakra, that highway between the heart and the mind, and the expression of joy. I think we're still in a stagnated expression of joy in a lot of ways, and once we're joy, I believe, is the antidote to trauma in a lot of ways, and so so that's a big part of what I've experienced and what I like to share.
Yeah, I'm interested in what you said about integrating the heart and the mind. Like, so many men and women are totally in their heads, And then, you might get other people that are maybe too much in their hearts. For you, what's a healthy balance for a man? And how does he come to understand, integrating the mind and the heart? Because a lot of men and women think they're living in the heart, but they're not actually. It's not just about feeling emotions, is it? It's about embodying. Can you please explain from a man's point of view how you would explain integration of the mind and the heart?
Yeah. Well, there's that old phrase of like, you've really got to fall apart to be someone, like that kind of thing. Like, it's, yeah, mind and the heart. Well, ultimately, how do we trust any of our instincts? And if we're looking for a balance point between two extremes to find the middle way, like a Christed way, we have to experience the balance points in their extremities to really be sure and comfortable with our level of truth that we're trying to represent. As if this is the balance point that's what I think, or this is what I am voting for. Yeah. But I guess fasting really helped with that because it was a zeroing off of all of the, people don't talk about the mental, emotional, spiritual kind of zeroing off, bringing back into the physical being, the dismembering, the cutting of all of our pieces that we go through in life. And then the remembering, so dismembering and remembering, bringing together of all those pieces. Yeah, so yeah, I guess it comes down to in those moments of happiness, connecting those moments to moments of pain, and um, yeah,
Mm, it's lovely, thank you. So, what does freedom mean to you?
freedom. Well, I always think of like cigarettes as are a good example of freedom. In terms of someone smoking, but then there's that secondhand smoke aspect that's around, and so nowadays we have vaping and things like that, so people can, I'm surprised that culture hasn't turned around to smokers and said, hey, there's no reason for you to be secondhand smoking, everyone here. Why don't you either vape or you do it at home, because it is a violation of that simple idea of I do what I want as long as it doesn't hurt or negatively affect someone else. And so freedom, I mean, we live in, all the systems are set up in a way to restrict freedom. So we're still, I think that's a huge question collectively that we're going to have to talk to each other about. And I don't want it to be whitewashed. I want it to be a real discussion. And we still don't. We're still in the dark about some of things. We don't know who we are, where we came from, where we're going. Like we have no idea. And so to talk about freedom, like what are we going to do every single day? As a representation of our efforts and identity. Yeah, it's a huge one. So I get freedom for me is continuing to just like so many times when I've wanted to search for more truth or been had a learning block or some kind of blockage for me, in a way I haven't been free. And so coming together and once we, imagine the shock of the world, something giant that comes along that gets us to reframe things and start to value each other more and to start to have these conversations more. And it's not just a small minority going out to the forest doing this, it's everyone. That kind of level of disaster. Then that's what I'm really, really see happening in the future. Like this incredible coming together and really questioning what we do every day as a purpose. You know, without having this has to be done, scarcity mindset, poverty mindset, this is what needs to be done. And you going out there and fasting or singing all day with people is a waste of time, and you're not contributing to society. You know, there's this abundant mindset. It's kind of like the bonobos versus the chimpanzees. You know, how the chimpanzees had all the were north of the Congo River and had all of the competition from gorillas and orangutans, whereas the bonobos were south of the Congo River and just had each other, you know, and were able to, you know, live in a more abundant mindset. And if you just really look into the difference between the bonobos and the chimpanzees and how the chimpanzees are almost cannibalistic in some ways, whereas the bonobos, you know, are very have a very interesting kind of loving aspect to them. So yeah, I see a huge change coming in our world, like a La Bella Verte kind of expression of a feminine dominance rather than a masculine dominance, but still a very a reinvention of a masculine idea. Yeah. And yeah, so freedom. Yeah, I guess we're going to see what it really means. Like how, yeah.
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 Oh, amazing, Rena. We're going to start wrapping up now. So where can people find you?
Well, Telegram, Healing is a Feeling. Maybe we can post a link with the video. We do regular every week on a Monday. And maybe we should do something also for Australian time slot, because at the moment it's 3 in the morning. Are you up at 3 in the morning talking to us?
If I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I might look at my phone and I might think, oh, is it a day when either Reknow or Justin or Charlie are having a you know, middle of the night chat for us, and I'll put it on. But to be honest, I usually fall back to sleep. And if I've got time, you know, in amongst everything else, I will re-listen to at least a good portion of it, you know, when I can. So more often than not, but I don't set my alarm. But if I wake up, I definitely put it on.
That's been a really nice thing with Negative 48 and Charlie Freak and Justin especially. The kind of Telegram, you know, sweet little. I remember when it started, like it was so sweet to hear these beautiful voices, you know, just chiming in and having this kind of secret discussion, you know, about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, it's just an audio thing. It's kind of you tap the button to talk, and then you mute your own mic when you finish speaking, and then it's an open forum. It's focused on seeing the world through a kind of I guess a clearer state. You know, healing is a feeling, and you know, I try not to limit it to just health or just fasting. I think it's I want to learn and grow and develop in all areas. So yeah. But it's just it's a forum, like anything. Forums are what create the building blocks to more ideas and things we didn't know.
Yeah, and also when if people can't catch the live, you repost the recording, right?
It's always recorded and always posted afterwards. Yeah. So you can go back on the channel, and there's every single one that is a date is a weekly chat that would be questions and answers of, you know, what all of the questions about all of the health. Because with fasting and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of practical questions that we've gone through all of it probably multiple times by now. And so now we're more into what my hope was just raising the level of experimentation and just general awareness around it, you know. I remember listening to Justin and going, man, he doesn't know. You know, he doesn't know about some of these things. We've got to, you know, at the very least, I was like, I just want to share this conversation with Justin. And so it's been a dream come true to have him on the channel every week almost. you know, for both of us, it's been incredibly nourishing to share that time together.
Oh, you're definitely a great duo there. Reknow, what's your final message to men, maybe men who are struggling out there? What have you got to say to them?
Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess continue to trust. You know, even when we've lost, been damaged, or we've been, you know, had people had our trust broken, is always the time to trust more. You know, in relationships, for example, I always find whatever I'm complaining about with my wife is also what I'm not offering anymore, because I've withheld it from her. And so it's a very destructive thing. So yeah, just digging down into that. And I guess not buying along with the system so much. Obviously, going out, invest in yourself learning. Whatever people are afraid to talk about, always see it from the other side of point of view, and represent ideas, even if they're not popular. You know, especially with Christianity, for example. You know, it's a very taboo topic. But if you're there trying to reinterpret it, it's okay to be knowledgeable. It's okay. That's what we need. If we can turn churches around into real places of truth, imagine, like, I go to church, and I'm obviously, the leadership of the church is not so happy with what I talk about a lot of the time. But there's always people around the church community that are up for the discussion. And I always say, I'm just being authentic. I just want to have this discussion about, is Christ, you know, was Jesus just some man that's away from us, or is he within us? And are we here to take that message and take? And so, you know, there's huge scope for really good discussion in churches at the moment. You know, leave your atheist friends behind. They're a long way behind. You know, focus on the people who want to go into the spiritual discussion, and maybe are a bit, you know, because in my church, half of the people there are completely separated from their family because of their faith in Christianity. So within them and in their cultures, they have, you know, it's not just conspiracy theorists that have been, or truth seekers that have been cast aside. Religious people have as well. And same with LGBTQ community as well. It all needs to come together as this one group. And all that's going to be left are the people that just buy into the system and aren't paying attention. You know, that's the real divide. You know, there's only one disease, and that's unconsciousness.
Yeah. Great.
So, yeah, hopefully, the more I see it, the more I see how engineered our culture is in so many different ways, and it's being done for, not just on the dark side, on the light side as well. And it's another manifestation of you know, God being a synonym for just what we can't understand. It's just too complicated. If you had that kind of mind, think of a supercomputer or whatever you need to just be in trust, be in faith. That if you just stand up for your truth and try your best, you know, that's another one of the 4 agreements, is to try your best.
Yeah.
The 4 agreement. Yeah. And bring the 4 agreements out when you're going to have a difficult discussion with someone, you know, as a front-loading thing. It's a great book. So the 4 agreements are to try your best, to be impeccable with your word in the direction of truth and love, and it's always the one that you can't remember.
Take things personally.
Don't take things personally is a big one, and it's so important for discussion. You know, it's a huge one. And then the last one.
I've got it here.
She's got it there. There you go. Like any good heart warrior. There you go.
Because I was triggered the other day by someone attacking Karen, and even though I'm not Karen anymore, I still feel that I have to defend her. And someone told me they weren't attacking Karen, they were attacking the archetype of Karen, and not to take it personally, and to read the 4 agreements. And I said, well, I've got it, so I'll reread it. What's the fourth one? Is there an index? I go through the whole book. What's the fourth one? Come on, Reknow. Here we go.
Oh, what is it? Don't take things personally. Always try your best. Be impeccable with your word. And
always do your best.
I've had to talk about so many. I have to think so hard. It's definitely the one I need to work on. If it's the last one you can't remember,
Don't
it's
make
definitely
assumptions.
Don't make assumptions. See, there you go, nailed it. That's definitely what I need to work on.
I'll put this book in the below under recommended resources, because it's one of the classics that is and it's not that big. We can all read it. It's probably online, it's probably on YouTube or something, but it's a great book. So amazing that you brought that one up, and that's the one. I still haven't read that chapter, but I will.
Yeah, it's another tool. It's another beautiful tool given to us there's so many great resources out there. We can start integrating, and that's another thing on the channel. It's about integration of what we've learned. Whatever it's Charlie Freak's information or it's fasting or whatever, it's integration. So we have that breeding ground, because so many people are not involved in this process. It doesn't mean we can't come together and start to really live in these truths that we've uncovered that are so important, and not making assumptions. It's it's a huge ego buster a lot of the time. And I think humbleness and humility, like humility and humiliation, we have to be willing to be humiliated and not afraid of being humiliated, to truly be free.
True. Yeah. To get to a point where we don't care what other people think. Is that what you're saying? That's freedom.
Imagine the most humiliating moment you could ever experience, and to just not feel pain towards that, or to not feel or to come to some kind of peace with that, that was meant to happen for whatever purpose.
Oh, such a good conversation. Thank you, Reknow. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your energy, your wisdom with us. So thank you. And everyone, thanks for watching. If you could like, share, subscribe, get the message out there, and we might see Reknow back on Manspeak at some point.
And I just want to say, your series of Heart Warriors is so on the money for what is so important, that we all connect with our hearts again, and you're an absolute godsend for this series, and for the way that you do it, and the message that you're trying to share. And I just can't. Yeah. As soon as I heard about, I don't do many interviews, but this one for you, I was 100%. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, amazing. All right. Well, lots of love. Stay on if you like, and I'll see everyone in a couple of days with another episode of Heart Warriors. Bye.